Barsoom, the red planet, had never seen a day like this. The twin suns cast long shadows over the jagged cliffs and endless deserts, painting the landscape in deep shades of crimson. John Carter, standing atop a high plateau, felt the weight of destiny press upon him. He had survived trials that would have broken any ordinary man, and yet, the challenges before him now seemed far greater than anything he had faced before. The news of Princess Dejah Thoris's peril had spread like wildfire across the warring factions of Barsoom. Alliances that had lasted centuries were faltering. The Tharks, once sworn enemies of Helium, moved cautiously, unsure if Carter's presence would bring salvation or disaster. Among the cities of Helium, whispers of rebellion had begun, as nobles debated whether the princess's boldness was a risk too great to bear. In the stillness of the Martian night, Carter could hear the distant drums of war. The armies of the rival cities were mobilizing, their banners fluttering against the red sky. Carter knew that every moment counted. He thought of Dejah Thoris, her courage, her unwavering loyalty to her people, and the fire in her eyes that had first drawn him to her. She was more than a symbol, she was a living beacon for a divided planet. The princess, meanwhile, was engaged in her own battle. Inside the palace walls, she met with the elders and advisors, each offering counsel laced with fear and caution. "We cannot wait for John Carter to decide our fate," she said firmly. "Barsoom cannot be held hostage by fear or tradition. We must act, even if it means challenging centuries of custom." Her words sparked murmurs, but they also ignited hope. In the shadows of the Great Hall, a few who had once been her enemies now saw in her a leader who could unite the fractured peoples of Mars. They pledged their allegiance quietly, knowing that the coming days would demand absolute loyalty and courage. Outside the city, Carter moved with silent precision. Using his knowledge of both Helium and Thark terrain, he scouted the enemy positions, calculating each move with the strategic mind that had saved him countless times before. The ground trembled as massive machines, ancient weapons of Martian origin long forgotten, were being readied by the rival forces. The technology was dangerous, unpredictable, yet Carter knew that understanding it was the key to survival. As night gave way to the pale light of morning, the first clash of forces began. The drums of war echoed across the valleys, and the Martian winds carried the scent of burning sand. Carter led a small contingent of Thark warriors to intercept the first wave, using guerrilla tactics that had been honed during countless skirmishes. Arrows of energy streaked through the air, machines roared to life, and the desert shook with the fury of combat. Amid the chaos, Dejah Thoris displayed the resolve that had earned her the respect of even the most skeptical elders. She directed the city's defenses, coordinating movements with precision and inspiring courage among the soldiers. Where others might falter in fear, she remained a pillar of strength, her presence a rallying point for those who believed in a unified Barsoom. Hours passed like minutes. The battle raged, ebbing and flowing across the desert plains. Carter's leadership proved decisive. His ability to anticipate enemy movements, combined with the loyalty he inspired, turned what could have been a devastating rout into a series of small victories that kept the enemy at bay. Yet, he knew this was only the beginning. The true test was still to come, when all the factions would converge for the ultimate confrontation. In the High Council chambers of Helium, tension reached a fever pitch. Advisors argued over strategy, over alliances, over whether Carter's interference was a blessing or a curse. The princess, calm and resolute, silenced the chamber. "We have faced worse threats, and yet we have survived. Let us not be paralyzed by fear. Let us meet destiny with courage, not hesitation." Her words, though simple, carried the weight of centuries of hope. And in that moment, even the most doubtful among them found their resolve strengthened. Plans were set, contingents were marshaled, and the people of Barsoom braced themselves for what was to come. As twilight fell, Carter and Dejah Thoris met on the edge of the city walls. The air was thick with the scent of ozone from the battle, the sky painted in hues of blood red and violet. "This may be the greatest challenge we have faced," Carter said, his voice steady despite the tension. "But together, we can turn the tide. We must." Dejah Thoris nodded, her eyes reflecting both determination and hope. "Barsoom depends on us, not just on warriors or machines, but on the courage to do what is right. We will face this, together." The night was filled with the hum of ancient machines awakening, the distant cries of soldiers preparing for the final assault. Shadows danced across the jagged cliffs, as if the planet itself was alive, watching, waiting. Carter felt the weight of responsibility, knowing that every decision, every action, could tip the balance between survival and annihilation. Dawn broke with a fierce brilliance, illuminating the battlefield in stark relief. The armies gathered, the machines poised, and the tension in the air was palpable. Carter and Dejah Thoris moved among their allies, offering words of encouragement, strategy, and reassurance. It was a moment that would be remembered for generations, a turning point in the history of Barsoom. The clash came swiftly and violently. Arrows of energy and molten sand tore across the battlefield, ancient machines roared and struck, and the cries of warriors echoed in the Martian valleys. Carter's leadership was tested as never before, his instincts guiding each movement, each maneuver. Dejah Thoris's presence steadied the defenders, her courage a beacon that inspired even those on the brink of despair. Hours passed, and the tide of battle ebbed and flowed. There were moments of triumph and moments of peril, when victory seemed almost impossible. Yet, through it all, Carter and Dejah Thoris remained unwavering, their bond growing stronger, their resolve unbroken. Finally, as the Martian suns set behind the distant mountains, a hush fell across the battlefield. The enemy forces, battered and demoralized, began to retreat. The defenders of Helium and their allies held their ground. The cost had been high, but the result was undeniable. Barsoom had survived, and a new chapter in its history had begun. Carter and Dejah Thoris stood together, overlooking the battlefield, the silence settling like a blanket over the exhausted warriors. "This is only the beginning," Carter said softly. "Barsoom will need leaders like us, time and again." Dejah Thoris placed a hand on his arm, her eyes reflecting both weariness and determination. "We will face whatever comes next. Together." And as the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting the red planet in a fiery glow, the people of Barsoom began to rebuild, inspired by courage, unity, and the knowledge that even in the darkest moments, hope could prevail.